So, why doesn't No Earth want you script? Let's talk about that today. Hi, my name's Eagle. I'm the publisher and the line editor at No Earth Comics. And we recently changed our policy. And mind you, that's nothing new. We change our policies all the time. We are continually evolving because what we're trying to do is a new business model, and we have to evolve. We have to change what's not working to get to what's working. So one of the changes that we recently made was we stopped accepting scripts. And this was not a decision made easily because right now the entire industry is geared towards accepting scripts. But we decided we're not going to do it anymore. We are going to be having everybody go through the pitch process. And there's a number of reasons for that, and we're going to talk about some of them today. The first is that all too often what we get is a generic story. And by this I mean it's a story that can be dropped into any comic book universe comfortably. So the general thing that the author wants to do is drop it into a nice quiet corner of the No Earth universe and just let it go from there. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for scripts that fit into the No Earth universe, that take advantage of it, that show new things and different things about No Earth, and that interact with the other titles. One of the things that we have determined as a benchmark is whether or not we can have a crossover with another book within the first 6 issues. And it doesn't have to be a big crossover, it can just be a cameo, but the geographic locations have to be similar enough, the purpose of the book has to be similar enough, there has to be something that ties it in, and something that allows us to do Easter eggs and to show that this is one interconnected world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a little bit more difficult to articulate, and that is scope, scale of story. And what it winds up being is that we wind up with somebody who wants to tell this big epic story, this world-changing story, this universe-changing story, and that's not what we're about. One of the things that the Writer's Guideline says is that we prefer stories that are a small story told against a large backdrop. And the problem is people have gotten jaded with epic fantasy and with epic comic book crossovers, and we're not trying to go there. We're not trying to do that, but even if you look at the best ones, as an example, we're going to look at Lord of the Rings for a moment. Lord of the Rings is billed as epic fantasy, and it's not. It is this huge, sprawling story, but what it really is a simple story with a lot of subplots, but those subplots are almost all dealing with one or two individuals, sometimes an entire company of 9 people, just trying to accomplish something simple, the destruction of the ring. And the destruction of the ring turns out to be one hobbit's journey. And it's a small story. It's just told against this huge background, and that's what we're looking for. As another example, a lot of the crossover epic events for comic books become too big, and you read the book and there's not enough time spent on individual characters, there's not enough time spent on individual plot, and you wind up with this mess that looks like it was all tossed in a blender and somebody hit frappe. It doesn't work, and this is one of the reasons for the epic crossover event burnout. But what we're looking for is small stories. We're looking for personal stories. There's an old quote that one death is a tragedy and 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic. So this segues from scale into stakes. And while we can tell a story that has the fate of the world as the stakes, that gets old. It gets old real quick. What are we going to do today? We're going to save the world. Hey, we saved the galaxy twice. Do we get to raise our rates? And so the problem with stakes is once you have established the stakes, and the stakes, by the way, is what's at stake. This is very simple. So when we are talking story construction, we are talking and we ask you about stakes. That can be simple. It can be as much as ruining somebody's day. It can be as drastic as killing them. But remember that one death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic. This is why a story about a mass murderer terrorist doesn't play quite as well as the serial killer. Or even better, the single murderer who is going to get away with it. So when we're looking at scripts, one of the things we're looking for is the stakes and how well you establish them. And frankly, most of what we have gotten for submissions, the stakes are too big. They're too big for the reader to wind up caring about. And you can have a writer who can make you care about large stakes, but it's rare. And frankly, it takes a lot of setup. It takes a lot of buildup. Doing it in one issue or even a 6-issue arc is problematic. So a lot of times the stakes in the scripts that we were getting were too high, and especially for a short story. So we got tired of that. We got tired of characters that were not unique. If your character is an analog for a character from another company, we don't want it. We don't want your Batman clone. We don't want your Wolverine clone. We don't want your Superman clone. We don't want your whatever clone. We're looking for unique stories. Now, if you want to tell a story, we've got a book coming up called Triad. And Triad is based on one of the ideas I came up with, and it is basically a Batman story. But it's Batman from a new and different angle. It's Batman with the idea that no one person could actually achieve the level of hyper-competency that Batman has. So the idea was to come up with a way for a small group of people to do the same thing. So we did. And that story is being developed, and it's in the pitch stage right now. But it's not going to be Batman. Batman is the basis for it, but it's not going to be Batman. It's not going, other than being a street-level nocturnal hero, there's going to be very little in it that you will be able to look at and say Batman, unlike, say, Moon Knight or The Shroud over at Marvel. And this is intentional. We wanted to take something that was specific and not deconstruct it, not break it down, not do a slightly different take on it, but do a very different take on it. And this is something that we enjoy doing. But too often what we see is, I've said this before in videos, we don't want another billionaire vigilante. Not unless there's something new to be said. Not unless there's something different to be said. And this is frankly hard to come by. So what we've done is we have shut down taking scripts. Now all we're taking is pitches. And the reason for this is because we can work with a pitch. We can go over the pitch, we can examine it, we can take it apart, tinker with it, put it back together, and let the writer develop it in front of us so that we get a better idea of what we're getting into. A lot of times our pitches wind up with a phone conference between me and the writer. Generally because it reaches a point where we've got so many things that are going on that just the comment in the Google Docs isn't enough. And so we wind up with a phone conference. And by the time we get through the pitch process, we are now confident that the script that comes out of it is going to be three things. Number one, it's going to be tailored for No Earth. Number two, the scale is going to be correct. And number three, the stakes are going to be correct. And when I say tailored for No Earth, something to point out here, if you can take this script and drop it into Marvel's universe or DC's universe, it's not tailored for No Earth. We're not after something that's interchangeable. We're after something that depicts the No Earth universe in a new and exciting way, that adds to the genres that we're covering, that adds to the overall ambiance of the entire universe. And we're always looking for ideas that fit within. As an example, we've got 2 books that are going to be coming up that are set in the CSA, the Confederate States of America. We've got 1 book already set in the CSA, and that is Johnny Reb. Johnny Reb is going to be dealing with the vigilante underground. One of the new books is going to be dealing with the Jenner underground. Now, in a lot of the CSA, they're going to be one and the same. But this is going to be exciting because this gives us a way to cross these books over and to firmly maintain that they are set in the same universe. And this is part of the intention here. We don't want the books feeling like they're shoehorned in. So one of the purposes behind this is so that we can have a meeting that turns into a crossover. And now that No Earth's going to do crossovers a little bit strange. We are not going to make you go read another issue in order to understand the title that you're reading. What we will do is we will present the same story twice. We'll present it in each book that's affected. So on this one, the pitch name is Shepherd Street. I'm sorry, the pitch name is Jenner 8. On this one, we would be having a crossover with Johnny Reb, and we do that by telling the same story in Jenner 8 and in Johnny Reb. And we tell it from the point of view of that book. So if you are just reading one of the books, you're fine. You get the story. If you are reading both books, you get a fuller story, but you're not missing anything if you're just reading one story. And this is not how comics are usually crossed over, but that's okay. We can get away with that because we have an editorial board rather than single editors. We can get away with that because we have a dedicated line editor. So we can make this work. But we're a smaller, more nimble company. So this is why we are not accepting scripts anymore. And it's due to fitting into No Earth. It's due to scale of story. It's due to stakes. It's due to the way that the scripts that were coming into us were not No Earth scripts. And we had 3 of them come in on this last round of submissions, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go straight to the pitch process, and we're going to develop these stories in a way that they will feel natural and organic as part of the No Earth world. And that pretty much covers that. So thank you for tuning in. And I appreciate, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. The subscriptions help us. Hit the like button if you liked the video. Share this if you hang out in places where there are other writers. And please help do what you can to promote us, because you're helping promote creators. Thank you very much. We're going to talk again.